We're going to jump into a Broncos-Texans preview, but really quickly, I want to do a watch party for this game, but my boss said we got to get to 18,500 subscribers. Now, I talked him down to 18,450, so don't let me down. Help us reach that number and hit that sub button if you have not already. Welcome on in to the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, previewing a very important Week 13 matchup with major playoff implications potentially at risk here as a pair of 6-5 teams clash in H-Town. A tiebreaker up for grabs for a two pair of teams that are definitely eyeing a wild card spot. I don't see Denver or Houston winning their division. And if the winning team here comes down to the final week and it's all about a tiebreaker head-to-head, this game could be something we look back at as something that keeps one of these two teams out or in the playoffs. So let's set a little bit of a primer before we get to my keys to victory for this game. Houston's offense against the Broncos defense. CJ Stroud and company are averaging 23.5 points per game. Total yards favoring Houston. Third down percentage, Houston been very good in that area. Denver has been good in the red zone defense, giving up touchdowns half of the time. Meanwhile, Houston has been scoring touchdowns a little over half of the time. Turnovers, though, Denver has forced 22, 16 specifically amid their 5-game winning streak. But CJ Stroud and the Texans have been very smart with the football, which is not usually what you see out of rookie QBs, right? Only 11 turnovers for Houston's offense. Now, as for the Broncos offense, we'll check that out right now as they have scored 22.3 points per game. They go up against a Texans defense giving up 21 points a game. The Texans defense has given up 347 yards a game, while Denver's offense is barely getting over 300 yards a game. Now, something to monitor is the Houston Texans' third down defense. They are giving up first downs 42% of the time. That is bottom 10 in the league. Now, Texans defense has not been anything like Denver's defense in terms of takeaways, just 15 takeaways through the first 12 weeks of the season. So who you got in this game? Before we jump into my keys to victory, let me know, Broncos or Texans? Let me know who you think is going to win this game, and I'm going to give my score prediction at the end of today's video. Now let's get into our keys to victory. First key to victory is this one. Turn takeaways into touchdowns. I have been preaching this for weeks now. And ultimately, Denver has gotten by the bare minimum in terms of capitalizing on all the takeaways the defense gives them. My fear is this. What happens if the defense doesn't give the offense the ball 4 or 5 times a game and they produce just one takeaway? Can Denver still capitalize on only getting one takeaway from their defense? The Broncos have forced 16 takeaways and have scored 35 points off of those takeaways amid their 5-game winning streak. That's 2.1 points per takeaway. They're not even averaging a field goal out of all of these takeaways. They've only scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, again, it's working, so it's hard to really be upset. But once again, I go back to this. If the takeaways disappear, which, let's be honest, if we're talking about things that can be consistent, takeaways are not one of those things. Sometimes the ball bounces your way. Sometimes it bounces out of bounds and the offense holds on to the possession, right? Sometimes the receiver does not tip the ball and it falls to Justin Simmons or PJ Locke, and instead they just make the reception. So if you rely on takeaways to fuel your offense and you're not even really doing a great job of capitalizing on these takeaways with points and you've won some close games, I get nervous about thinking what happens if you don't get the takeaways and you're not getting these very little points off of them anyway to begin with, what the result will be. Second key to victory, don't bank on takeaways. I mean, this is what I was just kind of getting at here. If you are so reliant on one source of it and that goes away, which, like I just mentioned, it's not always going to bounce your way, you are going to be in a world of hurt. Denver has started at the 50-yard line or better 14 times throughout this winning streak. They have only scored 4 touchdowns. Like 14 times they started at the 50 or better. And they are 4 for 14 in scoring touchdowns. 5 field goals. 9 scoring opportunities altogether out of 14 cracks beginning at the 50. Now, I'm not demanding that they bat 1,000, right? There are going to be times where maybe they turn it over themselves or a quick 3-and-out is forced, but only getting 4 touchdowns. I went back and counted twice because I thought I miscounted because that number seems so low to only have 4 touchdowns from the 50-yard line. So if you bank on takeaways and you are winning a lot of one-score games like we saw in Minnesota and Buffalo, and the takeaways aren't happening, like CJ Stroud's just not turning it over and the fumbles aren't there or the fumbles just don't bounce your way, we're going to find out a whole new side of this Denver offense, and they are going to be called on to step up because the defense just doesn't have it that day. Now, before we get on to the rest of our keys to victory, I want to give a shout out to our awesome sponsor, Prize Picks. We all know there can be some clunkers of primetime matchups, and right now I'm not thinking the Seahawks are going to give us an awesome game on Thursday Night Football. But with Prize Picks, you can stay locked in on every single game by picking more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and if you pick more or less on up to 6 players, you can win up to 25 times your money. So let's take a look at my selections for Thursday Night Football. I'm taking the less on Geno Smith's passing yards, but I like the more on CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard's yardage. And then I think Geno Smith and this offense are going to have some drives fizzle out. So I'll take the more on Jason Myers at 1.5 field goals. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS. When you do those two things, Prize Picks is going to give you guys a deposit match up to $100. Now, all that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Third key to victory for the Broncos, push the ball more down the field. And I understand that what I am saying has not been true for what Denver has accomplished throughout their 5-game winning streak. Like, they have won games without scoring a bunch of points off of takeaways, right? They have had a lot of takeaways, and so they don't need to bank on takeaways because they've always had them. They don't know life without them throughout this winning streak, minus really the Packers game. But my fear is if we see the takeaways just dip a little bit, what are we going to have out of Russell Wilson and this offense that isn't starting 14 times at the 50-yard line or better? When you look at Russell Wilson's stat line over the last 5 games, under 200 yards, 4 out of 5 times. Like, Russell Wilson has done a great job of managing the game, and that's a little weird and honestly sad to say for a guy that's getting paid what he is, but we're past that point. What's done is done. Are you going to invest or what? We are here now. Russell Wilson has that contract. The trade is made, and we need him to be the best quarterback possible for this team to help win games, and that's what we're seeing right here. But these are the types of numbers you can get by when your defense is as incredible as it has been. And so I'm going to challenge Russell Wilson and this offense to pick up their game a little bit more and not coast off a defense that has provided 16 takeaways over the last 5 games. I want to see balls thrown downfield a little bit more. I want to see Marvin Mims get vertical. Jerry Jeudy attack the sideline, right? I want to see them push the ball down the field because it's working now. Denver's offense is doing what it has to do to win these games, and so there's no complaints. But if you're wondering if a loss or two were to pop up, what happened? What went wrong? I can kind of tell you this. What Russell Wilson is doing offensively is not sustainable if you do not have great field position. It's working against teams that maybe aren't playoff caliber-ish teams, right? It worked against the Vikings and it worked against the Packers, but they've also had some great games against playoff caliber teams like the Chiefs and like the Bills and like the Browns. But without those takeaways, and I know that I've said this a million times, so you're probably screaming, Petey, move on. But my fear is that it's not sustainable if your defense does not give you 5 takeaways, and offensively, you only throw for 175 yards. It might work once in a blue moon. You can definitely get by doing that, but not week in and week out. Fourth key to victory for this game, don't baby CJ Stroud. Let's talk about the Texans for a moment, because the first 3 key to victories were all about Denver, right? And Denver's doing a lot of great things right now. You don't win 5 games in a row by accident. But CJ Stroud, in my eyes, is the front runner for NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. He has done so many tremendous things for Houston. He has put up magnificent plays and highlights. And CJ Stroud is not some rookie QB that if you throw a bunch of different design blitz packages to, you're going to confuse him. Or CJ Stroud has been lackadaisical with the football. This is not rookie Peyton Manning. CJ Stroud set an NFL record for most pass attempts to start an NFL career without throwing an interception. So don't treat CJ Stroud like you treat any other rookie QB. He is looking like a 3 to 4 year veteran in his first year. So don't, baby CJ Stroud. Give him what you would give any treatment for a veteran quarterback. Fifth key to victory, dominate special teams. Not win special teams, dominate special teams. Because this is a huge X factor that goes in Denver's advantage. They've got Wil Lutz. He has been awesome this year. 92% on field goals, 24 for 26. And meanwhile, Houston, on the other hand, I don't know who's kicking for them on Sunday. They had a kicker who got hurt. Then they signed a kicker, Amendola. He sucked. They released him. They brought him back to the practice squad. They might elevate him again if Kai Fairbairn is not healthy enough to play on Sunday. But this is an area where Houston, unfortunately, has suffered because of the injuries at the kicker position. And Denver, although, has not had tremendous special teams, I would say, outside of Wil Lutz and like a couple of good moments from Marvin Mims, like when he won AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. They have been like average to above average. But this week, I want them to be like elite unit special teams, right? Flipping the field. Riley Dixon has the game of his life. The Broncos dominate in the field goal department if this game does come down to who's going to make the last kick. So for Denver, I'm going to put it out there in front of them. Dominate. Not just win, dominate in special teams. All right, predict the score for me down below in the comment sections. Broncos versus Texans. Let me know what your score prediction is down below. I'm going to give you my score prediction in just a moment. But if you have not already, scroll on down and let me know. I think Denver wins this game 24-21. Like I was just saying, if this game does come down to which kicker can make a 49-yarder at the last second, I would put my eggs in Wil Lutz's basket over whoever's going to end up kicking for Houston. So I think the Broncos do win this game, but I am nervous for this game. I am more nervous for this game than I was for the Browns game if I'm Denver, right? The Texans on the road are a good team that maybe you didn't think was going to be as good based on what their preseason expectations were, but they are playing great football. Up until their loss against the Jags this past Sunday, they had won 4 out of their last 5. So it's going to be a close game for sure, but I think Denver ultimately ekes out the win.